All right, this is our last project for our session for pop art, and this is probably my most favorite one of the session. This is going to be a Wayne Thiebaud inspired pop art cake. So we're going to use our foundational knowledge of coil pots. This is essentially just a coil pot right here turned upside down. It mimics the lines and layers that you would have of a cake. And then there's this slab overlay right here on top of it. And then some little, decorative strawberries on top. The kids can do whatever type of cake they want to do. So for this, you will have a lesson plan. This is the only thing you need for this particular project. So for this one, I'm going to hold it back here so you guys can see. Wayne Thiebaud painted brightly colored common objects. Excuse me. If he painted an object today, it would probably be something like a Stanley Cup or a crock. He liked to paint really common things with these bright colors to just make it feel different and to make it catch your eye, something you wouldn't normally stop and stare at. When Wayne Thiebaud was younger, he worked for Walt Disney. He drew cartoons by hand because that's how they used to have to do it. He lived to be 101 years old. So Wayne Thiebaud was a very, very cool artist. I'm really excited we're able to fit in here. If you guys can look really closely at these cakes, when he first started doing this back during the height of the pop art craze, no one was using these bright, almost neon colors for things. So that was really, really groundbreaking for him to do. So I would give just about anything to have an original of his. If anyone sees it at a yard sale, make sure to pick it up. And by yard sale, I mean MoMA. All right, so things that we need for this is we need our clay, we need a pencil, always our water, and I've got my trusty little paintbrush here. Step one is we're gonna divide our clay into two halves. So one of them will be the coil and one of them will be the slab that's going on top for our icing, the slab part right here. I'm actually just gonna put that right there for you guys to look at. I made this, and if I can say so myself, it is adorable. All right, so step one is we're going to make our coil pot. Now, I know you guys have made a million coil pots. First step to make a coil pot is to divide our section into smaller sections. The kids have, I think, the hardest time with rolling out coils. It's just not something that your muscles have any really memory of unless you played with Play-Doh a lot as a child and made like a lot of snakes. So whenever I teach a class with coiled stuff, I end up just kind of walking around and making coils the whole time. But it should go quickly once they get the hang of it. Anyone who is older than the first grade should not have a problem with this. If their coils keep breaking in the center, it's because they're not putting even pressure on it and it's getting thinner in one spot. That one thin spot is where they put too much pressure. So I have 3 coils here. As always, we're going to start by making our cinnamon roll bottom. However big this is how big your pot's going to be. So I've made it this big. That means my pot's not going to be any wider than this. That's fine with me. This will be kind of a thinner, smaller cake, a skinny cake, shall we say. We need to erase those lines in the center because our clay will come apart like a slinky once it dries. So we still have our beautiful coil on the outside, but the inside will be nice and smooth. Then we're going to start building our walls. The way we do that is we just coil the clay up on top of itself. Just like I always tell my students, just like if a snake was coiled up in the grass, that's exactly what we're doing here. We are coiling our clay on top of itself. Now, I really don't want this to be like a giant tall cake, so I'm gonna pinch off part of that and save it for later. Now the inside of this, I've still got all my lines, so when this dries, it's going to come right back apart, just like a slinky, right like that. So we need to make sure that we are blending the inside. The kids can do this. This they complain about a lot, but it has to be done or else this will definitely fall apart. They can either use their finger and they can press down on the inside and blend it. They can use a paintbrush. Sometimes that tends to work a little bit better. They can use a paintbrush and paint the lines away basically on the inside. They can also use a paper towel, blend that way, or a lot of kids like to use a pencil and just kind of scratch it all up inside and then smooth it out. That way all of the clay gets blended in and it's all smooth inside. Once your coil pot is made, we're gonna flip it over because this is the shape of our cake. Boop. There we go. Our next big step, we'll just set that aside. Our next big step is we need to make the icing for the top of it. So this is going to be similar. If any of you have already made the Keith Haring, gingerbread ornaments, this is going to be a similar shape to that, kind of like a splat shape. Actually, I have the Keith Haring here so I can show you the shape here, like this. Whenever you would, you know, put icing on top of a cake and it would kind of drip down, like if you were drawing a cake, you want to make the splat for that. So the kids need to pancake it out with their hands. If they want to, they can roll it out with their pencil to make it a little more uniform. Once they have it big enough that it will cover the top of their pot like this, they can leave it like that, or if they want it to be cuter, they can go in and make it kind of wavy on the edges like this. And that will give it a little more of like a cartoony, I don't know, it's kind of like a fried egg shape. So we're gonna lay this on top, but this is definitely not going to stick like this. When it dries, it's going to come back off. So we of course need to score it. So I'm going to make my lines here on the top. I'm going to make my lines on the bottom of this where we're attaching it. Get that nice and scored. I'm gonna put water all over both of my scored marks here, and then I'm gonna lay it flat. Now, because gravity is just going to do what gravity does, the chances of this icing falling off is not great. You can go in and press it from the bottom as well. Press our icing down like that. All right. And then after this, basically the kids can do whatever they want to do to the top of it. It needs some type of texture, whether you do polka dots. This one has polka dots that are like pressed into it, but then I also glaze some polka dots on the top as well. They can add strawberries to it. They could put sprinkles all over it. Whatever kind of cake they want to make. I just thought this would be more interesting if it had a little bit of dimension on the top, like these little strawberries. But for this right now, just remember whatever they put on the top does need to be blended really well. If they just want to do like one cherry in the middle, that's fine. They'll need to make sure that they score, slip, and blend it best they can. Of course, my favorite is to use the paintbrush and the water to make it all smooth. And then we'll give a little cherry stem. Remind your students that if anything is small or fragile, like this little cherry stem that we put on here, there's always the chance that that's going to fall off. So don't be super attached to it or super sad if it falls off. The best way to keep any of that safe is to make sure that it's attached and laying down flat, just like that. All right, so I have a little cherry on the top of that. We're gonna call that well enough. Maybe put some polka dots on the top of it. And then if you have kids that are early finishers in this one, you're just going to keep telling them to add more texture, add more designs, add more lines. You have extra clay? Maybe we put some leaves around, or we add some sprinkles to it. There we go. That's it. For the names on these, they're going to go on the inside, which is great because when I wipe off the bottom to put it into the kiln, when I wipe the glaze off, I won't wipe off in here. This won't touch. So you'll make the name really nice and big on the inside like that, and it'll be nice and safe. All right, guys.